All right, Trump signs an executive order eliminating the Department of Education. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Trump signed the executive order to remove the Department of Education. Okay, so he made a promise. He's following through with it. So let's get to it. Let's get started with it because right now there are so many people saying this is going to happen right now. This is what Trump did to the Department of Education.
Weapon. They say if I press this, it's the end of the world. Nuclear weapon. They say if I press this, it's the end of the world.
And that's how a lot of people are feeling about the Department of Education right now. Let's find out what's going on.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the federal Department of Education once and for all. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right. And I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right. And we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country. And we haven't for a long time.
Now, here's the thing. We know a lot of these agencies have failed, all of them, including the Department of Education, because we are drastically behind. How do I feel about this? 50-50. On the one hand, okay, Department of Education going. There's probably been a lot of waste and a lot of failure. I mean, the United States is, listen, we are drastically behind the rest of the world. And not to mention, with higher education being so expensive, it's very clear the Department of Education, I don't know what you're doing, but you're not doing the last part of your name, education, because every single state, every single city, every single town in the USA, we are falling behind. Americans are getting dumber. It's like we are in the middle of the idiocracy, a pandemic right now. I did a segment on how Americans are getting stupider and stupider. Yes, it's involved social media, but also it's a society and our institutions. Our whole system is falling apart. So on the one hand, okay, Trump, you're getting rid of it. What comes next, though? Because I have two different things to think about. Like, okay, you're getting rid of one thing. Did it do any good? Like anything in Washington, D.C., it's a flat, bloated mess. On the other hand, well, what's in the other hand? Oh, gee, do you trust our politicians in D.C. to come up with a better plan? Do you trust them to come up with a curriculum that's going to, get us out of this rut that we're in? Because the great St. George Carlin, a man ahead of his time, a man who was very well aware, said this: they don't want an educated populace, because if the people are smart enough to know that they're getting screwed up the wazoo, the owners of this country are done for too. All right? It's a big club, and you ain't in it. I mean, George Carlin, that's that entire show that he was doing, talking about how we've lost everything and how in order to believe the American dream, you got to be asleep to believe it. He wasn't doing that to be funny. He was giving us the warning. Are we going to be educated? Like, what does the future of education look like in America? Because the current administrations, both Democrat and Republican, didn't do anything to uplift anything. We're still behind. I mean, my goodness, our ability to think critically, mathematics, reading, and writing, we're behind the rest of the world. I want to pull up this article here as well, just to trigger the libs. Always to trigger the libs, as we should indeed. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order aimed at dismantling the Department of Education, which he is accused of squandering taxpayer dollars and promoting progressive social experiments. Ugh. All right. Set up in 1979, the department is tasked with overseeing education, issuing grants and student aid, as well as enforcing anti-discrimination policies at federally funded schools. Trump has long argued that it has become wasteful and politicized. On Thursday, the president instructed Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, married to Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Yes, that name does sound familiar, doesn't it? To take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the state and local communities. What could go wrong? No, there could be a lot could go wrong. According to the order, doing away with the department would provide children and families the opportunity to escape a system that is failing them. Mathematics and reading scores are down in public schools despite per pupil spending having increased by more than 245% since the 1970s, indicating that more spending does not mean better education, the White House said. It added that taxpayer money would no longer be spent on progressive social experiments and obsolete programs. Were there obsolete programs? Absolutely there are. The White House spokeswoman, Carolyn Levitt, said that the department will be much smaller than it is today and will continue to administer student loans and federal Pell Grants. Will it? Because student loans, yes, student loans, student debt, college debt, because that's what every single American dreams for, to be in debt for the rest of their lives and be a senior citizen at the ripe age of 80 or 95 saying, I finally did it. I paid off all my student loans. Education in America. Of course, this does cause a meltdown and pushback, especially with people like Rachel Maddow who get scared.
Now, as Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz, he was the first former teacher in 50 years to be part of a major party presidential ticket, and he's recently been barnstorming Republican congressional districts to highlight the unpopularity of Trump's agenda. Governor Walz, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Thank you.
Nice to be with you, Rachel.
What's your reaction to closing the education department today?
Well, we knew it was coming, but it's still a day that I dreaded. I dreaded it as a teacher, as a parent, certainly as a governor now. And the sad part for me about this is Donald Trump doesn't know anything about education. This has been a long time dream of the far right to crush the public education system, to take that money and transfer it to private schools that don't exist in a lot of areas or rural areas, and to undermine some of the missions of the Department of Ed, making sure everybody gets an education, regardless of race, religion, or abilities. Students like my son who depend on IDEA and individual education plans to make sure that they're treated equally and get the best possible education they can. That's a hallmark of America. I think America's great contribution to the world is our public education system. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't care. And I appreciate you showing that photo because it's so obscene that he would put a mock classroom. We all know he's never been in one. He wouldn't last for a minute. He's never done it. He's surrounded by people who know nothing about education. And
well, wait, he did go to school, okay? Now, of course, he probably hyped himself up. He's like, I'm the best guy ever. I was number one in class. But he went to school. That's straight up lie there, Tim.
They want to make this about bureaucracy and cutting. This is about children. This is about broadband access in their schools. This is about the research you were talking about, pedagogy, things that we learn.
By the way, Credits Born says, I'd believe in the education system if they taught accurate history, which they don't. Hell, they don't even teach kids on how to write checks or open a bank account or either that get themselves educated and ready for the system that's going to screw them over. They just tell them to take a test, take a test, take a test. The Department of Education, in theory, could have done good. But how's it been working out for you these past few years, these decades? I know some of you are parents. How do you feel about the Department of Education going by type 1 for it's the end of the world, Kit? Things ain't looking too hot. A type 2, I really couldn't give a damn. It was stupid then, stupid now. Good riddance, but what replaces it? I wonder how many 2s will be in the chat.
And then it's about the Civil Rights Department at the Department of Education that makes sure that we don't have a situation where a Ruby Bridges is escorted to school with police. And so we're back in it.
And yes, absolutely. I know how to write in cursive. And what scares me is that I ran, speaking to younger people, they don't teach cursive in class anymore. That is a dangerous thing because cursive helps you understand things a little bit better too.
In an area where we can segregate, and he knows that curriculums and those decisions are made on a local basis, but they muddy the water. So look, just like your previous guest, thanks for having her on, but it's chilling. They don't care about law. They don't care about where the American public's at. And that kind of segues to why I'm getting out there. And there's a reason that these Republican Congress members aren't holding town halls because this is so unpopular, they can't defend it. But I'm going to make sure that the voices of their constituents are heard.
Now, I don't want to spend too much time listening to Timmy and good old Mad Cow yelling at each other, screaming, crying about the Department of Education. But look, Torwin writes, imagine if we actually taught the true history of American school. That would be too subversive. Yes, because, there's a lot of things that aren't taught, the expansion west, It wasn't high fives and handshakes with the Native American tribes. No one talks about how American businesses during the Second World War, like Ford and General Motors, gave, resources and equipment before the war started in this country. You never heard of it. Germania, going by the name of the Third Reich, with this guy. You never heard of him, Adolf. Yeah. No one talks about that. No one talks about how Disney was a fan of him. No one talks about how in 1942, the Luftwaffe in the hot desert would have the Coca-Cola formula, make them, wrap up those bottles in wet towels, tie them underneath the airplanes, and fly them high in the air. No one ever talks about how we got to the moon. No one ever wants to talk about the CIA and El Chapo. I'm just only dusting the surface. I'm not going too deep. Department of Education. Mixed feelings about it. But what replaces it? And now it's in the hands of the states. And I just want to say this right now. We are still dealing with economic uncertainty, and many states are struggling economically, socially, politically. Some states are better off than others. I think we're in for a rough ride here. But I am ever hopeful that we do take education seriously here. But to quote George Carlin, they want people smart enough to run the machines, but dumb enough not to ask any questions. Are we walking into idiocracy mixed in with 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451? I sure hope not. But I fear that we are.